don't know what to say because my work is absolutely or totally different from what else. I mean, there are two artists here today on the stage, Sharath, who should be here right now, but his flight is delayed, and me, puppeteer. When they say puppeteer, the first thing that comes to mind, especially in the Hindi-speaking belt, is Katputli or Kaat Ki Putli, which is basically just from Rajasthan. And I'm from Pune at that time. Now live in Delhi, right through Ahmedabad, from NID and ISRO and Darpana Academy. And if you're talking about change, the two things, okay, my work is a bridge, a change between the traditional and the modern or contemporary. When we speak about puppets, everybody thinks of small figures, cute dolls, and otherwise it's the traditional puppet, which we have far more of than contemporary work. You have something like 7 or 8 states in India which have traditional puppetry. Fortunately, unfortunately, we only know the Kathputli, which is from Rajasthan. What is interesting is in India, puppets are not known as other places in the world by the technique. There are 4 techniques: string, how they work, string, rod, glove, shadow puppets. But in India, more or less they're known from the material they are made from. So in Rajasthan, it's Kathputli or Kaat Ki Putli. And Kathputli is nothing else but a string puppet. If you go down south to Andhra Pradesh, it would be Tolu, Bommalattam. Tolu as in leather, Bomma as in figure, and Attam as the play, which would be the leather puppet dance. And it would be a shadow puppet if you didn't know what it was. So this is something interesting. We haven't researched why. It's possibly only in Maharashtra, in Sawantwadi district, Benguli, and in Bengal, where they still call it by its technique, Tarir Putul or Dangir Putul, or in Maharashtra, Chhaya Putul, or Chamdiyachi Bhaulya. So it's interesting how things change. They say, I'm not a historian, but they say India is the birthplace of puppetry. We cannot prove that because most old cultures have had it. Southeast Asia, India, China, Japan, and puppetry goes right through from Central Asia, shadow puppets especially, right up to Greece, Turkey, including Iran. In the middle, there's a gap. And then you go into Europe and Americas. My work is a little different. It's more with educational puppetry, creative work, and using puppets more as a means, not as an ends in themselves. So I mix with puppets, actors, dance, music, masks, to tell a story. It's the two things here. One is this whole thing of social awareness, educational work, and you'll see some slides working with messages on HIV awareness, substance addiction, and the other is eclectic stuff, which is puppets, theater, music, poetry. Puppet, which has no life, directly speaks to you by the way it's made, by the color, the object. I will demonstrate something to you. Give me your bag, please, quickly, as we have to run in this time. An object, which is a bag, generic, okay, and it speaks. If I go, I'm using this as a screen. If this bag was to become a character, don't think about the person who uses the bag or what it's meant for. But the first impression that you get in your mind when you see a bag, and if I have to generalize male or female, how many would say male? Okay. How many would say female? Now, this always happens. Why? Question yourselves why. The first impression is maybe the structure, the form, the material it's made from, the color. Most of you would say the form and the color. But today, most of them are wearing black, females as well. So it's half my work is done by you. I make something, and you put in your imagination into it, and then it becomes alive. Any art form is not just one way. It has to be interactive. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. So here, if I'm going to animate this bag, and physically animate it right now, and if I go to this generalization of male, big or strong, I would animate him, okay? I could even do this, but at the moment, this is what speaks to me through the object. If I had another bag, or if the same bag was another color, you would totally think, thank you, you would say something absolutely different if it was blue or pink. The problem, or not problem, is the baggage that we carry through childhood, and that is what is speaking. So this is something that we need to think about when we talk about change, because we have concepts. I'm not being judgmental, but what we say is, okay, male, female is this, you know, young is this, girl is this, boy is this, and this comes through all society, through change, through your way you grow up, where you are, communities, the colors you are, associated with, and this goes through life. And we see almost everything, if you think about it, through this prism. And sometimes it's good to break away from it. However, change cannot be without responsibility. Again, object animation. I will demonstrate to you without words a small thing with shoes. Can I have your shoe, please? One shoe, one shoe, one shoe. Okay? Now shoe, the same thing. Okay, male, female. Male. Why? Because he's wearing it. Forget what if it's because he's wearing it. What if this was another color? Okay? The same color that she's wearing there, bright pink or magenta, you would totally think of something else. Can I have something that's absolutely different, feminine? Yeah. Okay? Now watch what happens. The two objects, and this is the ABCD of puppetry. What you see later is different. The two objects and they form a story. Now I'll animate these two objects without any words, and you tell me eventually what happens, or you'll know what happens. Okay. Now, what we did here was very simple. You have to get your shoe from there. What we did here was very simple, using an object to tell a story. Inanimate, animate. Now, half the work was mine, the rest is yours. If I'm doing this, the very same improvisation with 7, 8-year-olds, they would talk about child and parent. If I'm talking with teenagers, it would be either Eve teasing or he knows her, she knows him, he's late and that's why he's angry, blah, 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 she's angry. If I go to adults, husband and wife. So it's again your subconscious or what you are associated with, which connects with the story. As a German puppeteer once said, a puppet is like a vessel. It's 50% of the emotion that I put in and the rest is yours. So whatever I'm doing is being helped by you. We quickly go through some slides of some of the work that I do and the different types of puppets. This, of course, is the most well-known Kathputli in this area, Kathputli, and it's a wooden puppet, string puppet. Now here, this is my work. I play with scale from the traditional puppet to the human actor to giant puppets. These are big rod puppets which are moved by 2 or 3 people. Masks, one person wearing a mask and the others are in the hand. Mostly movement pieces. A site-specific piece where we're using, now you see the scale of the puppet with some rope work, object animation with movement, with dance. A shadow play for children where we break the screen, the flat screen, and go into shadow to projection to something which nobody now uses, the OHP, the overhead projector, which we used to use in classrooms, and working with sand, with other materials. An object piece called Simple Dreams, where you got very tired of using figurative, puppets. So we just used sticks and umbrellas and created a whole thing on evolution from water, flight, land, immigration to the beyond. And it was just done with movement and putting the sticks together. A lot of music. This is interesting. This was about 7, 8 years ago, a UNESCO project. 18 countries which were selected. Our group was one of them. And it was on the street shows on And we went to institutes, schools, everywhere on HIV awareness. And there were about 5 or 6 performances on discrimination, on awareness, and then the next year was on substance addiction. When I said you could say things through puppets easier than live actors, this was an issue on gender, on issues. Male, female, male, male, female, female. We did not have figurative faces, we were just had figures. Because it would be very culturally very sensitive to go to a school and talk about certain things. And that could be said through puppets much easier. For instance, if you were talking about safe sex and you were talking about condom use, in a school you could not show a real condom, but you could show a puppet condom which was 6 feet tall, made of foam, and that wasn't a problem, including in a Catholic institute in Nagaland. This then went into the mass things, which was on the substance addiction. It was on peer pressure in classrooms, in schools, where this young boy, with his gang, then comes into this gang and then starts sniffing glue and things like that, and then what happens to the family. Yeah, this was a recent piece, which was called Heer Ke Waris. It was based on the famous love story Heer Ranja, Waris Shah, 18th century, and the same problems about, you know, female infanticide, honor killing, a love between two communities, between social strata, and Heer Ke Waris, and the puppets were the old story, the original story, and the actors in it, who also manipulated the puppets, were the present-day two, girl and boy, living on the outskirts of a large city, and the same problems that they are facing. So it was like a mix between and it had obviously music, yeah. The idea was the two actors with the puppeteers, they project themselves in the inanimate objects, the puppets. So what they are saying at some point of the contemporary times, and then they go into the old story working with the puppets. The puppets emote sometimes better, they're more tragic, they die better than human beings, and that's how Heer Ke Waris happened. The simplest thing about puppetry becomes what we formally call a glove puppet, because this is where it starts mostly, shadow and glove puppets, we believe, and then this is what happens. This is just a basic cutout, but it would have a costume, it would have things on it, and it would work over the screen. But what is it that makes you believe in the shoe or the bag for those 5 or 20 seconds that we work the puppet? Animation is not just shaking, but it's less is more, you know. How do I relate or convert the human movement into an object? Okay, because the object has its own language, right? What we call willing suspension of disbelief. For those few minutes, you know that this is not alive, and you go into the life of this because it talks to you in a certain way, because it says something. And that is what basically what puppetry is about. The puppets which I have here, or as you saw, are mostly worked by 2 or 3 persons, you know. It's a technique that came from Japan called bunraku, which is a theater, elaborate theater, where 3 puppeteers are in view of the audience and work figures. In this case, I'm alone working the figure, but even so, watch what happens. And a third person would actually move the legs and make it walk. There would be 3 big human beings behind this small figure, but for that few minutes, you would go into the life of this object because, as I said, willing suspension, disbelief, right? And what is it? It's just a piece of styrofoam, thermocol, wood, plastic, you know, but it's what it says, simplicity or less is more here. And that's what's important. What is the difference, I would say, or you would ask, between tradition and modern? It's always been this question. We are modern puppeteers. Are we spoiling tradition? Are we disregarding tradition? No, there is a continuous line. A car moves, or a bullock cart moves on wheels, but it's the progression, the material changes, the use sometimes changes, but all of it is connected with the society or its surroundings. As in the now, the traditional puppeteer or the traditional artist is also performing for you in the present, as well as the modern puppeteer. So he or she would also be in that way. The tradition comes through a history, through a family background, which the modern puppeteer may not have. But that also starts happening. What I have started in my work, working with these large giant puppets and street, human beings, in 1980, when I first came to Delhi and started at the Sri Ram Center, the Sutradhar Puppet Theatre, say, how could you do this? How could you have actors with puppets? Today, it has become a tradition in modern puppetry, and there are many other young puppeteers who are using the same thing. So whatever you do at some point of time keeps changing. I mean, things don't just drop out of heaven, you know. People think about them, they make them, they create them, and then they keep evolving. And that is something that's very interesting to see, at least for me, when I see the work. Just the last short video from Transposition, where you see dance and puppets together. I'll just show you one last thing without much sound, the playing with scale, bringing to life. Again, a figure.